Hi, welcome to a very special edition of No Prize Podcast. I am the Professor Bud Young, and as most of my listeners know, I have a penchant for Mark Gruenwald. He's been my idol for over 30 years, and I would just love to, tell you more about him. My quest to learn more and more as I do. I've had Kat Schuller Gruenwald on several times, and she's with me again today, along with Mark's daughter, Sarah. How are you guys doing?
We're back together. I'm
So
Stepsy M and she's Stepsy D.
Yes.
it's like it's like one of those relationships they keep on giving. So tell Sarah, tell me a little bit about your relationship with Kat, because I know she's your stepmom, and it's just a special relationship. It seems like
Real mother bird.
Well, yeah, she's more of my best friend than stepmother. So we've always been very close, and I feel very honored to have her in my life. And it was like you were a life-size Barbie from when I first met you.
That's another story.
Right.
I want to tell you how Mark introduced me to her. Told her that I was a model, and one of our favorite Twilight Zone episodes was when the mannequin
episode.
Oh, really?
So she thought that I was a mannequin.
Yeah, I didn't know the difference between a model and a mannequin, and I was like, but Daddy, how can you date someone who doesn't move? And he was like, no, kiddo, not that kind of, not a mannequin, a model. And I was like, oh.
And she was like 4? No,
Yeah.
you were 5. Yeah, you had just turned 5. Because I met Mark in January and her birthday's in September. So she had just turned 5 when I met her. And you're 36 now?
Yeah, I'm 36.
So
that was many years ago.
So Sarah, meeting Kat, were you already big in the fashion industry and everything even then?
I was a plus size model then. That's why she told her dad told her I was a model.
Yeah.
And to Sarah, she thought that meant I was a mannequin.
Yeah, I didn't know the difference.
From the Twilight Zone episode.
Sarah, were you a little starstruck?
Oh, definitely. Well, because Kat was by far the most beautiful live woman I'd ever met. I was like, whoa, she's so pretty and blonde and she smiles and laughs and big personality. And just play Barbies with me.
Oh yeah, I played Barbies with you. That's what really clinched it.
So, Kat, I want to jump in on a question for you.
Okay.
Before I want to start really talking to Sarah, but I know that you were just in New York Comic Con a couple of weeks ago, and you did your What Grew New panel. And can you please tell me how that went? Just to give me a taste, because I know you're coming to Rhode Island Comic Con, and I'm going to see you there in a couple of weeks. But tell me how that went. How was the reception and keeping Mark's memory alive, which I think we're all trying to do.
And I think that one of the things that I've started to do is a Cosmoda cosplay runway show in his honor, because he loved costumes, of course, and he also ran the Marvel Halloween party. Mm-hmm. So this is a perfect, and he always said that that fashion and comics belong together. And so I just imagined if Comic-Con had a baby with Fashion Week, what it would be. So I created Cosmoda, and one of Mark's fans, Dan Hort, is huge. Again, I just love all of Mark's fans. And he said, I'll be your producer. And I thought, well, that's going to be a match made in heaven, because I know the man. Dan knows his work. So if we do a panel together, I don't have to worry that issue 307 I didn't know was the first Captain America issue that Mark worked on. I don't have to worry about those details, because Dan's right there to back me up. So we thought to do a panel for Mark, and then the fashion show in Fashion Week was more the Cosmoda thing. And we talked about, Mark came out and talked about the foundation, the comic book challenge in Oshkosh, and how if anybody saw Loki, that Mobius and Mobius was based on Mark's personality at Marvel, and what he did with Marvel is what the Time Variance Authority reflected on his organization and his genius of pulling everything and organizing it together infinitely. Organization. So I think that I like doing that panel so much because Dan moderated it. So I asked Tom DeFalco, Tom Brevoort, Danny Fingeroth, all the usual players, but because Marvel didn't have a booth this year and they were afraid of COVID, they didn't want to show up. So didn't want to do a Zoom call because I think that the Javits, believe it or not, does not have great Wi-Fi. So I'm going to, announce that all these people are going to be on the panel, and then we can't access them. So I figured let's keep it live. So I had Carl Potts and I had Lisa Hawkins, who Mark really brought into the fold. She always asked him about, do you have any work? I want to work. And he actually took her under his wing, and not too many women in comics had that opportunity to be mentored by Mark. And she said, he's my work hero. I am the editor-in-chief of Valiant today because of Mark. And so that was such a nice homage, and she's doing such great things at Valiant. Then there was me, and then Pedro Rodriguez is another fan of Mark's, and he is very knowledgeable. In fact, when I did Chris Couch's class at the School of Visual Arts, he came and spoke with me, and he is another Markophile, very he's probably a little younger than you, Bud, but it's the same age that you guys all came into reading.
We're all the same age.
Yeah, and it just cut your teeth on Mark's work, and never, and there's so much history and so much development and evolution that he plays into, and he knows what was going on politically in the climate at Marvel. So, and I wanted Al Milgram on the panel, but he was busy in Artist Alley. And so Dan was on, and then Nikki Manis is helping me with the Mark Gruenwald Comic Book Creation Challenge in Oshkosh. So she's getting some sponsors, and so I just had her talk about the comic book challenge and what we're doing with Foundation. So a lot of what we're doing is really tied in with keeping Mark's memory alive. And then I had a lot of cosplay. There's Cosplay Central that was and I think that's at Rhode Island Comic-Con too. There's a cosplay aspect to Comic-Cons now. And it's not just hanging out in the lobby. I mean, they have panels and they talk about the craftsmanship and all of I think I might try and get Micromark as a sponsor, because they have everything from glue guns to prosthetic devices to knives and whistles and banners and anything you need to make your costume. So it would make sense that I would find a sponsor like that. But as I was going around the convention, I just said, I had my badge on and it had Gruenwald on it, and everyone has some great recollection of Mark. And I was able to reconnect with Jim Shooter too.
Really?
That was an interesting moment because I think Shooter gets a bad rap. And he, there's not a lot of goodwill sometimes that follows him, but gosh darn it. I mean, we got to give the man credit. Number one, he's from Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh. And he hired Mark. He was part, and he has a giant book of everything that he did at Marvel. And he has all of Mark's things in there. The Michelle Marsh thing he had in there where Mark was collecting posters for almost a year and had it in every crevice of his office. And then one day it just came down and they made these masks of Michelle Marsh, was this broadcaster on channel 11 News. If it concerns you, it concerns us. Mark got so obsessed with these posters and he had people bringing them in from the office. He was pay people $1 to bring in a poster. And then he put it in inside the doors, inside the windows. And, Jim allowed that. And he even told me when Mark created this haunted room, how he was so afraid that Dalton was going to find out and, call him on the carpet. And meanwhile, everybody was lined up in front of the office to see the haunted house that Mark had created. Because he asked Jim if he could use the office to build in for 2 months and move to another office. And Jim said yes. So I had to give him his ups. I had to give him the credit. And we had a lovely conversation for almost an hour. And I was hanging out with Joe Simon's grandson, Jesse Simon.
Oh, I met him. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was, he had come to the signing at the Forbidden Planet. And I forgot, that, I forgot who he was, and he came up to me. So it was just a wonderful reunion. And then this whole cosplay section was on fire. And so I got to know this this company that's doing a film on cosplays called Lost Cause, COS. So we bonded, and so it was a smaller con this year, but it was more meaningful for me because I had the panel, and probably they gave me the panel because they didn't have too many panels, so I was able to sneak in there. But and I just, I really am looking forward to coming up to Rhode Island to do the same panel. And then I was at a party last week, and I'm standing there, and I started talking about, I don't know what I was doing, Cosmoda, whatever. And she's the director of Rhode Island Fashion Week, and I'm doing Fashion Week and in New York, and I'm looking for Rhode Island Fashion Week, and it found me. So she's going to be on the panel of cosplay judges. So she's going to come, she'll be up there. And I think they gave me like 8 passes or something like that. So we're going to take a booth. So we'll have a booth. And Dan is a pretty good collector, so I think he's going to have some good stuff in the booth per se. And then we'll also have the panel, and then we're going to be judging the cosplay fashion show on Sunday. So
awesome.
it should be a really, and I understand. I think it's going to be really another meaningful time, because now I'm meeting cosplayers. I'm meeting cosplay, professionals. And so we're going to make Cosmoda like a directory of, who's who in the cosplay field, because I feel like they don't get a chance to really go on a runway like this. And this one guy, Mark Candell, who does Dr. Doom, and he does an excellent direct recreation of Dr. Doom. And before we went out on stage on September 11th, he came over to me and he said, I'm just gonna have my nerd out moment. And he's like, I just want to tell you that your husband meant everything to me, and everything that I did as a kid and I'm doing now. And I said, I'm talking to Dr. Doom here. I couldn't believe it. He said, I hate to nerd out on you, but I don't want to miss my chance to tell you it's an honor to be in the show. And I said, it's an honor to have you, Mark. My heavens, it was what a costume you did. And he took over that runway, and he made me realize I've got to train the models who are going to be doing cosplay to own the runway as Mark did, as Dr. Doom did. And guess what? He got a commercial for Allied Chemical Bank. He booked a commercial right off the runway. He said, bucket lists. I got a commercial and I got on a runway stage in Fashion Week. So, and Mark I told the story during the panel that when I went to Marvel to meet Mark, they were auditioning for She-Hulk, and they went to a plus size agency to get big women, but we weren't big women like steroided John Byrne women. We were just large, you know. And he told me that I would have been better for the Enchantress.
Oh.
So I looked up the Enchantress and I said, you know what? Before I get too old to be able to play the Enchantress, so I'm going to. Mark Handel did the head plate for me, and I'm going to have my friend Rick Brennan do my hair, because you know the hair it's like, you know, big hair. And another friend of mine who almost has this Alexander McQueen technique, he's going to do the green bathing suit, and then I'm going to have these cuffs with the I'm going to take that one, that look. And so I'm going to do the Enchantress for February, so I'm working on that costume.
Well, see, so now we could say, you know, Mark was based on Mobius, and now we can say Sylvie was based on Cat.
Exactly. Enchantress. Wow. So he got his wish finally. I got to play Enchantress.
That's awesome.
So all in all, it was a wonderful Comic-Con. I was there more than I had in any other years, and didn't see a whole lot of people, you know, other than Artist Sally that I knew. But I made a lot of new friends with the cosplayers, and you know, we'll just keep building on it. And I hope to involve Sarah too, you know, because she's an excellent artist. She even introduced me to the term cosplay like 6 or 7 years ago. She told me what cosplay was. And so, you know how kids, they keep you hip.
Of course, yeah. That's what I had kids for.
You're right, exactly. That's the thing. So I really, and you know, she's got a great eye. She's a wonderful artist, a fantastic stylist. So eventually, I think once we get this built, I can travel around the country doing the different fashion weeks in the different cities, and then hopefully, like I'm doing in Rhode Island, you know, Rhode Island is November, and then the fashion week's in March. So we'll just build those relationships, and just, you know, to see where it goes, you know. So and if we can get some sponsors, you know, on board, then we can start to charge some ticket sales. Probably right now we're just kind of filling the stadium, and then you know, that's the next step. But I'm really looking forward to it. I really love working with Sarah so much. I mean, you know, I kind of groomed her because we used to go to flea markets with Mark and, you know, all these old toys that he was collecting, and we were over there with the dresses and the shoes and the apparel and the accessories and salt and pepper shakers, because I collected salt and pepper shakers in the day. And so, you know, we were always together, you know, in that capacity. And then in our country house, Sarah and I did all of the wallpaper.
Oh my God.
Stripped all the wallpaper in the house, and we had fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a great way to buy it, because he was over building the treehouse way down in the bowels of the yard. It's close to Ragnarok, I think, where he was. he had a big rock in the middle of the property, and of course he called it Ragnarok.
Of course.
Yeah.
What kind of toys did Mark collect?
Well, primarily action figures.
Like Marvel action figures, or really?
Yeah, and 3.
And yes, he had 3 of everything. So he had 1 to keep, 1 to save, and 1 backup. So there was like 1 that was on display that you could touch, and then 2 that you couldn't. But I still didn't touch any of his toys. Like, I knew.
But he hung them everywhere.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
Well, you would think with him working for Marvel that he would just be able to get whatever he wanted and not have to go look at a flea market.
Well, our flea market excursions were more for like vintage weapons and stuff. It was because he collected weapons that weren't guns. So I remember the day he found his scythe. He was so happy. He was walking around everywhere with this huge scythe, and he was.
And then he had nunchucks too.
Oh yeah, and he taught me how to do nunchucks. He had like a little plastic pair for me, and he had his.
He was an excellent nunchuck.
Yeah. Chucker.
I don't know. He was that, and he would practice in front of the mirror. My mirror. My
Really?
entire
Yeah.
mirror. And I said, Mark, if you ever let one of those go, it's going to shatter everything.
And
And
he's
he
like,
said,
"No."
I forgot to drop it, or I forgot to.
Yeah.
And I was like, he said, I'm just so glad you trust me so much. I'm glad. I don't know why I trusted him so much, but I did.
Yeah.
Because he was good.
Yeah.
He would not do anything that he didn't think he would attempt.
And
you know?
he never wanted to work on Master of Kung Fu, huh?
I think he probably, he was a big Bruce Lee fan. And who wasn't?
Right.
And I think he worked on Shang-Chi too. So I saw him thanked in that movie. So he was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think
I
I'm
haven't
familiar
seen
with
it.
Mark ever working on Shang-Chi.
I know, but they thanked him in the movie.
Oh, okay.
He edited a lot of things. That's the thing.
He did.
He edited a lot of work that he never got credit for, but I'm sure that his finger was in everything. He really had his finger in a lot of different titles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I'm reading on Marvel Unlimited, and I'm like reading like a what if issue, and there's a 5-page backup written by Mark with and especially with there was one he did in the back of an annual that was like all the different heights and strengths of all the different characters, and that was like a precursor to the official handbook, right?
Yeah.
Because I know like how Mark was huge into, well, Hulk is the strongest there is, but Colossus is strong, but not as strong as this guy, or like everybody
who would
needed
win
to
in
have
a
their
fight?
place.
It was always
Yeah.
the same. Who would win in a fight?
So Sarah, so I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about, first of all, what was life with Mark like, being his daughter for, I'm sure he doted on you and was very attentive. So
it was so much fun to have him as a dad. First of all, everyone was so jealous. I was the absolute coolest kid on Take Your Daughter to Work Day, because everyone had like boring doctors and lawyers and and then I was allowed to take one friend with me to Marvel every year. And so I always did that, and that made me feel really cool.
Was that back when they had the bullpen too? So there was like a bunch of people just working there. All right.
Oh yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
They all knew her.
And I would steal markers and I would put them back, but I'd be like, oh, I like this one. And then my dad had the best rule, because he, like I said, he collected toys and action figures and DVDs and comics, but for toys, because we would always hit the toy stores on our way up to the country house, and so he had a rule that for every 3 toys he got, I got 1. And if I found like a special rare one, like he would have a list of like what he was looking for, and it would be in order of regular, special, ultra rare, and so if I found something ultra rare, I would get something extra special. So it was so much fun to go shopping with him and to hit all the toy stores, and it was.
She had a radar up for things she was looking for, and she'd look for me too.
Oh yeah, I would look
for
I was good at
pepper shakers,
yeah.
And she really kind of knew my taste in things, and it was just the one thing about Sarah was she was such a reasonable child. I was babysitting her, and she would say, I need to brush my teeth to go to bed. And I was like, oh yeah, it's 9:00.
It's late. That's too late.
So, the funny thing was we had shared custody. Yeah. So every other weekend, and then every Wednesday.
Yep.
So Mark would tell her a story on Wednesday, right? On every Wednesday.
Yeah.
And even up in the country. But I really wish I would have recorded them, because they were
so good at telling stories.
So good. And he always included her as the hero in the story. And I loved that. And they would continue on.
Or sometimes the stories would have a purpose other than just entertainment. Like when I was little, I used to say worder instead of water. So he once told me a story about a good child named Water and an evil child named Worder. I never said Worder again after that. So it was kind of like
he was so clever.
He was so clever, because he never said that's not how you say. Well, he maybe a little bit, but it
Then
was
he
always,
knew how to
he
get
thought
her
of
with
like
it.
a good way to actually teach it in a way that it would stick instead of. He was never pedantic. He never talked down to me. I remember one of the things I remember most about him was he would always crouch down to get to my level when talking to me, because this was, when he was alive, I was still shorter than him. If he was alive now, we would be the same height.
Yeah.
But, back when I remember him, he was always getting down and his knees would crack. And I remember his knees. Yeah. But it didn't matter. He always got down to my level and looked me in the eyes, and he always asked me my opinion. Like, he would show me what he was working on. Also, I was always naturally gifted at English and grammar. So he'd be like, hey, kiddo, want to do me a favor? I'd be like, yeah. He's like, want to edit this? I'd be like, yeah. So he'd get free labor out of me. But I felt so cool and so special, because I'd be like, Daddy, you forgot a comma, or you didn't double a space. Like, it would be tiny little details like that. He's like, good job. He got a free little edit. So,
But he was training you, and he told me, look at this composition she did when she was 2. Look at the placement of the way she used the space and where she put everything on it. I was like, you're right. She was 2 years old when she did it. He had it framed.
He's a truly gifted child.
Yeah, and he rewarded her for being gifted like that too. But the funny thing is, I had this bracelet that someone had given me that was disgusting. I hated it. It was this big plastic, and it had these chunky big jewels. And he made up this story called the
magical bracelet of Hathor Parasa. And so, so each jewel had a special power. I still have this bracelet. I mean, it was like this magical amulet that it could do all sorts of things. Like, one was for flight, one was for speed, one was invisibility. One was, what was the other? One was for communication. It was like a universal translator.
Yeah, exactly. Yellow. And the other thing is, he had this weird obsession with Santa's gloves.
Oh yeah, with the mittens. So around Christmas time,
nobody had the same color.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, probably not, because most normal mortals wouldn't notice this type of thing. But if you look around Christmas time, Santa, in artistic depictions, whether it's, a toy or, a decoration or whatever, he often has different color mittens or gloves. And
red and white was always the same, beard always the same, black belt always the same.
Always
the mittens.
Different color mittens. And in my dad's mind, black was the only logical color for the mittens. Black was normal and safe. And
because the boots were black, so the gloves had to be black.
Right.
Yeah.
Coordination.
But
yeah, of course.
But sometimes you'd see them in red mittens or green mittens or white mittens.
Yellow.
That was weird.
Yellow.
Yeah.
And he found it and he would show it.
Yeah. And so Dad wrote a story called, the Magical Mittens of Santa Claus.
Yeah. And each one of the mittens gave Santa a different power.
But it was like an evil power.
Yeah. If it wasn't black.
If it wasn't black.
Like green was jealousy or something like that. Envy.
One of them made it rot. Wasn't that green? Or maybe not. I don't know. I just remember one made something rotten. So if you touched anything, it would decay.
I mean, that was just, and then he would make us memorize Morse code.
Yeah, we had to memorize
we had to do Morse code. So in case we ever got trapped,
we had to. When I tell people this, I was like, so my dad taught us Morse code in case there was ever an alien invasion, and my friends were like, your dad actually I was like, no, it wasn't scary. It was just like, if you're prepared, it'll be fine. With all of Dad's conspiracy theories, he never scared me. It was always just like, okay, so we're going to survive this. And this is how.
He was a Boy Scout.
Yeah,
he was be prepared.
And so, but not only did we have to learn it, we had to learn how to, like, a blink or a wink was a dit and a blink was a dash. So we had to do it in case we were, obviously in case we were bound and gagged and we couldn't actually make sound tap. So we had to learn all these different ways to do Morse code.
And that was a car game.
Yeah, that was a
car game. Not blinking, but we would do did. So we'd have to spell things out, and then you'd have to guess what the word was.
But then Dad and I would practice the blinking and winking on the subways when he would take.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you weren't with us with that.
This
Oh,
was this something he was actually worried about? Was attacked by aliens?
Oh, yeah.
He had he had a room
You
that
know,
was a.
He had like a panic room. No, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like a weapon, a
Yeah.
secret weapon.
It was a
closet.
secret hiding place in case anyone invaded the house. We could go in and
Yeah.
hide. So it was behind the bookcase.
Yeah.
You know, it turned around.
Yeah.
The bookcase.
Oh yeah,
turned.
yeah.
Flipped it.
Yeah. And so
The whole
he,
Batman thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
speaking of hiding, he was the best at hide and seek. Like, do not challenge that man to hide and seek because he will school. I remember he's like, "Daddy, I give up." Like, he wouldn't, because he would move. Like, it wasn't. He would, he wouldn't stay in one spot.
And he was stealthy. You
he
could
was
not hear him.
No, you could not hear him. But
He played it
yeah.
he played it to the nth degree, you know.
Yeah.
And he didn't mind playing Barbies with you.
No.
I mean, it was like he was a really.
But what it was also great was that he didn't like Dad. He still won. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't, just because you were a kid, he didn't like dumb down his skills to your level. Like, he would wrestle and he would always win. Obviously, when he wrestled, we would play like lightsabers. He would win, and he would often like win at whatever game we were playing. But it wasn't in like a malicious way. Like, I never felt like bad because I lost. It was just like, well, yeah, Dad's better. He's bigger and older, so of course he's better at playing these
But he
games.
taught you how to play.
Yeah, but he taught me how to
well.
play really well.
Really well. And then he used to ask her, "What am I, a daring dad
Or
or
a doofus dad. I'd be like, daring dad.
daring? You're daring." Because we were up in the property, and there was a lot of daring going on up there. We had a swing over the pit, and
We
then
had like a rope swing.
yeah,
that
rope
swung out.
swing, and then he did a tree house for her and his own tree house. So he was always building over there,
Yeah.
always building.
I think I saw a picture somewhere where he was building a treehouse.
Yeah.
And if you came up and you could scale that thing, like what was the Asian guy, Kevin Long or something? He went up it like lightning, and he just loved when Marvel people came up and they would play on the Jungle Gym.
Yeah.
So it was, but I used to do the teeter-totter. I mean, it's a 20-foot in the air teeter-totter with Sarah. So he would just blah, 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 nice little easy. I get on with Howard Mackey or something, or Mike Carlin. He flipped me like mashed potatoes on a spoon. And I was hanging for dear life up there on that teeter-totter because I went as high as, and my friend Billy jumped on the fulcrum and it saved it. So he bounced it out because I had never gone that high up, and it was like if I had slipped, I would have fallen on my back, and I didn't want to think about it. But anyway, and still to this day, this finger swells because I was hanging on that teeter-totter, and I bruised my thighs a lot because I was, it was. I had a booking and it'd be like, "What did you do?" I said, "Just put some Dermablend on it. And don't ask." My husband is a teater-totter that's 20 foot high.
Wow. So,
myself.
Sarah, now you had mentioned visiting Marvel Studios or Marvel when you were a kid. Is there any special stories that come to mind on any times that you visited Marvel?
Well, it was me. So, when I was little, I was still very much a little girly girl. So I was more into like the fact that Marvel they created Barbie comics.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would always go and hang out in the Barbie comic offices, and I was like always bothering them, and I was like, "Can I please be a character in one of the stories? Like, please, please, please." So finally, one day there's an issue where there's a little lamb named Sarah. So I got my little namesake lamb, and they would always have a little, like a drawn Barbie fashion contest. I was like almost always featured in that part because you could design an outfit for Barbie in the back.
But he had a little desk in his office where she could do her
Yeah.
homework, and then. I remember you took the picture of that Captain America shield that Stephen Colbert has now, and we were doing a shoot with it, like a shoot.
But Dad also used to, so he would draw blank, like naked bodies, not anatomically correct, just very basic outlines of superhero figures for me, and he would tell me to like draw the costumes and name them and explain what their powers were. So I'd be like, okay, and this is like,
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he'd make the face and the crosshairs on it so that you knew how
I knew where to put it.
Were. Yeah.
So that was really fun because it was always.
And of course, you became such a great artist because that,
Yeah.
And also the whole thing about teaching you how to create characters and their powers and just the way they looked and what the costume was.
Right.
And then I remember him always using the DVD. He had that DVD down, that video player, the video recorder. So we didn't have network television up in the house in Pauling. So he would record The Simpsons, Mad About You, the
Legends of the Hidden Temple for
right.
me. That was like my favorite. And then Clarissa Explains It All.
Clarissa Explains It All, and then Seinfeld.
And he would go back and he would edit out the commercials.
Right.
So I would edit every week. I would be treated to all my favorite TV with no commercials. Keep in mind this was like the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was streaming before streaming.
Exactly, and it was not easy to edit.
I know.
Well, no, this was on VHS.
Yes,
this was before DVDs.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, it was VHS. So he would have,
and he would set the timer, so that it would definitely.
And also Fairy Tale Theater, which, by the way, I just found a copy of like all of it.
Yeah. So I mean, he got super into the things that he wanted her to watch.
Yeah.
I don't even think you would have known about Clarissa.
No, he was really good at like picking things.
Right, and he would, and consistently, like he read the entire Frank Baum's Oz, all the books.
Yeah,
really,
which are still my favorite books to this day. I reread
night.
The Patchwork Girl the other day.
He would read a chapter,
and
until we got through it.
Yeah,
and that was just but then I get actually when we went out to Oshkosh during the holidays was when the stories got really good.
Yeah,
because the cousins were all characters. They all had all their own personalities that were
Kayla was always the naughty one.
And I could hear them in there giggling like crazy. And we were out there for a week. So this was a series of stories.
Then also whenever he was telling stories, inevitably I or my cousins would interrupt. He'd be like, "Who's telling the story? Me or you?" I'd be like, "You." Like he had no patience if you interrupted his story. No, none.
I tried that one time.
No. You cannot interrupt Maestro Mark when he was telling the story.
I got that wrath. I got that early on because I was making you giggle. Because every time he mentioned something, I'd say, "That's you."
Yeah, exactly.
That's you. And he just was like, "Okay. Are you done?"
No, he had no.
He could do it.
So, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say if it was.
Were these stories like off the top of his head, or
was completely
really just
like I remember there was this one about like a giant lollipop that all these kids were getting stuck to. They were always like a little sinister, and and then I remember that it was a reoccurring thing that I would have a magical makeup compact. That when you open it had different powers and stuff like that. So I was often saving the day with my little magical compact.
And he said, he would tell you to say, "Girls can do anything."
Yeah.
He
was definitely a feminist.
Yeah. He was like, "Girls can do anything," right?
Yeah.
And then we were up in the country, and he named every piece of property. So he would quiz us on what the map. We had 7 acres, bud, 7 acres. And if you would have come up to visit us, he would have had Young Fast Pasture or something, Bud's Lair or whatever.
Yeah.
But Mackey Way was Howard Mackey. Herdling's Glen was Glen Herdling, and then he put labels on all the trees. He named all the trees after the Celtic gods, the Nordic gods, and then there's trying to say those Indian names like Enanaspina.
That's not Indian. That's an alien.
Oh, it's an alien. Okay.
He always said he wanted a husky dog, and he would name it Enanaspina.
Only she could say that.
And I was like, "Can I call him Eminem?" And he was like, "No, no." And I was like, No.
But then he
I'm
would
gonna
teach
not-
us all of the gods and all of the Indian gods.
Well, and we would lay on that one rock, which I don't remember what it's called. Sorry, Dad. Probably Ragnarok. Yeah, and he would teach me all the constellations. Because you could see the stars at night, and that was so nice and magical.
That's
then
awesome.
the bats would come out, and he was like, 16,000 mosquitoes every minute those bats eat. And so he made bat cages. So he said, don't ever kill the bats.
Yeah.
Don't kill the bats. And, I remember like watching the bats because they were totally not birds. Around 7 o'clock when the bats would come out.
I don't remember the bats.
I know. We didn't see them that much, but a couple times we did. And he said, you can tell they're bats just the way they, they fly and whoosh, and swoop, and and then and we had 7 acres, so he was always down there working. Because I think that was good therapy for him too, because what Marvel was going through at the time. And he just, he went out in the woods. He was a Boy Scout. And I mean, one time we had a tree fall and he sawed that tree up. He was up in that tree with a chainsaw. And I mean, the fact that he was taken so easily by, like a heart attack after we went down, and he was all the stuff that he did. And when he would go skiing with Sarah, he didn't use poles. Yeah, he had her
I would ski between his legs.
I mean,
and I was like, that's normal.
They would go down the hill like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some balance. And he rode a unicycle and
crutch races.
And he drove backwards. He drove a bike backwards. Yeah. And he had incredible balance. Yeah. Incredible balance. And I think he was almost kind of an borderline athlete in that respect.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that he could take her skiing, and I was like, you didn't use poles, and she wasn't scared.
No, I was never scared.
When you were with Melinda, she got into accidents and everything else, and he was like, I took her down the black diamond between my legs, and nothing happened. Yeah. But
I slid down a hill.
When Melinda was watching her and like messed her face up badly, and I was like, I know. What can I tell you?
No one was.
You're a daring dad.
Exactly. But also Dad taught me how to rock climb in Riverside Park. So we would freestyle, no ropes, no belays, no nothing. And I was little too.
Find the
crevice. And we would always scare people when we would be coming over the top, because there would be people just like sitting on the park benches, enjoying a picnic or whatever, just eating, just chilling. And we would pop over and they're like, Jesus Christ, because no one climbed that. And because, Riverside Park, there's a slanted, incline. Yeah. So he would start low and every week go a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. He inspired confidence that you didn't even know you had, because everything felt so safe when Dad did.
I know.
Even though nothing he did was
so dangerous.
Between the weapons and the teeter-totter and the ropes. I mean, nothing, there was no safety nets.
I know.
Everything felt so
safe. I got on the jet ski with him and he said, I love that you trust me so much.
Because he really was.
He had no choice.
Wow.
You knew you could.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't take on what he didn't do.
Yeah, exactly.
And you knew he wouldn't put you in any danger because he had control.
Yeah.
And
so even if you didn't, he would be able to grab you.
Because he had ultimate balance, and you watch him and say, oh, I'm going to do that with him. Sure, absolutely. I know I can do it. Yeah. And it wasn't like he was daring you. He just said, come on.
Yeah. Come on. This is fun. Yeah, try it. Yeah.
Come on, we're going to do this. We're going to do this now. And I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I started skiing at 38. He was like, you're a champion. And I was like, I guess, Mark. Meanwhile, I had bruises up and down my thigh, and he took pictures of them and he said, that kind of looks like Sicily. I had these weird shaped bruises on my thigh, and he just, I don't know, he just kind of, he didn't turn you into a hypochondriac about it at all. You couldn't obsess on it. It was like, you'll heal, as long as you didn't break anything. Yeah. You'll just, you'll survive.
Wait, for some reason you saying that reminds me of Sicily, reminded me of when we used to go to Ralph's pool. He had a pool, in Jersey. He lived in his mom's house, and we would always go to that one Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
And there was always like
Adagio.
Yeah.
It had these.
It had the
wine bottles.
Chianti bottles everywhere.
Hanging from the ceiling. Mark loved that.
Yeah, and then I remember one time we went to, because Dad was obsessed with movies. We went to a double feature of Waterworld and Aliens, and I was really little, but he knew I would fall asleep by the time Waterworld ended because Aliens was maybe a little bit too scary or too mature.
I would have fallen asleep 5 minutes in a Waterworld.
Yeah, so I was asleep, but and we were in this like cool convertible, and it was so much fun.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was the Comic-Con that was out in LA.
Yeah.
That was Rob.
That's where we were in LA. Why did I think that was in New Jersey?
No, it was
just kidding.
We used to take her to Comic-Cons.
Yeah,
and then
he'd be like, and my lovely assistant, Sarah.
You'd bring her up on the stage. But remember when in the beds in the hotel room?
Yeah,
he would always spring up.
Oh my, yeah.
He would put the beds exactly, and there's something on the internet with him doing the same thing where he crouches down and then he springs up and he puts his legs like David Carradine style, one on one bed and one on the other.
He would always do that.
I mean, the man's like, he had serious abductors or whatever, but he would spring up and just stay on the bed like that.
Yeah. He would do all sorts of weird stuff.
That does sound
I was like,
weird.
okay, that's Mark. That's Mark. Oh man.
Well, Mark was the leader, and that's what I'm getting is that leader's lead, right?
1,000%.
No matter if you were in the bullpen or wherever,
or
you
at home in the car.
He was, he would command the entertainment direction.
Yeah.
And we used to listen to
REM.
REM, yeah. We had to learn "It's the End of the World as We Know It," and then all those like shadow tapes.
The shadow.
We would be driving in the dark, listening to those old radio shows.
Who knows what Evo lurks in the hog men?
And like crinkle, and
it was so cool.
It was so cool, and they were really good stories.
They were
super good stories. And then we had to watch Cold Dark. That was one other thing, because it was too mature. But he wanted me to. And I love Poldark to this day. It's such a great character. He is every man. He's a noble man, but he's every man. I could see why he loved that. And then I watched the Joseph Campbell series because that was like Mark's secret sauce, the hero's journey. He loved Joseph Campbell, and we didn't have television up there, so we could watch long stretches of shows, and he'd have us captive.
and with he would have us watch Twilight Zone, and he'd be like, okay, Sarah, do you want to watch a scary episode, a super scary episode, or a super super scary? And I'm like, just scary. And he's like, okay, super super scary. And I'm like, no. It was never that scary, but
I know you gave me a choice,
but you didn't actually listen to the choice.
So
I love the Twilight Zone.
I have a couple more questions because I know like we're running out of time, which is kind of weird. But Sarah, I know that after your dad passed, that you kind of jumped into reading a lot of his stuff that he wrote, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, were you able to kind of maybe get to know him a little more through his work?
Definitely. I mean, because you can tell like a Gru piece. He is the punniest, wittiest, most clever. He has this very kind of golden age, like omniscient narration style that I found is very, hallmark of him. So I can always tell immediately, and also, and he also has the best females. My dad writes a female character like nobody's business, like the baddest bitches ever. Dad is all about that.
All kind of multi-layers.
Yeah.
That's why I like when Diamondback was dating Captain America. It's like
Diamondback. Yeah. I think Diamondback was my favorite character back in the day.
Yeah, and I think that was such a great way for her. I mean, who has that legacy that you can learn about your dad through his writing, and really understand, what his contributions were, and that's a gift, that he gave both of us, and all just his leadership style. I use a lot of his leadership style in the way I conduct my shows. I don't, like Sarah was saying, you never feel like you're dictated to.
No,
you
never.
feel like you're part of, engaged in, you belong
And
to
that
what's
you're
happening,
valued.
and you're valued.
Very
exactly. And I think that his leadership style was par excellence. I just can't say enough. And his parenting style was the same way. And you know, his relationship style was the same way. He truly gave things to me like that he didn't want to do. He didn't want to do the wedding. I did all that wedding. That was me. Everybody thought that, you know, Howard Mackey, you know, juggling glasses and that whole whoopee cushion thing.
Yeah, that was so.
That was me. I wrote the limerick that went with that because he was like, I just don't have the mental. He had so much on his mind.
Yeah,
and you know, he said, just do, you know, the only thing that he insisted was we do the dance.
Yeah.
The opening dance, and that was the love theme to Blade Runner, and we went to class every week and had a choreographer because he said, I am not swaying out there to Lady in Red. We're going to do the love theme to Blade Runner, and he was dipping me and twirling me, and it was pretty amazing. Yeah. It was pretty amazing, and it was it set the tone, you know, for the whole wedding. And Sarah was a flower girl.
Yeah, I was a flower girl.
Well, I mean, I know this isn't really about me, but I could tell you, you know, how I feel about your dad. Was I got to know him a bit through just reading comics and reading his letters columns and his Mark's remarks, and and I always felt like Captain America was his voice, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
he was Captain America.
Yeah.
And just from reading it for 10 years, that run that he had was, you know, I feel like the decisions that Cap made would have been the decisions that Mark would make.
Definitely.
You know,
definitely.
And that was dilemmas. Yeah.
And that was where I was like, you know, wow, you know, if you had read, you know, you would get to know your dad through the actions that Captain America did in his comic book.
Yeah.
And that, when I was thinking about that, I was like, what a gift that was, or, you know, that could be, because you can pick that up anytime. And so my last question would be, you know, and I asked this question about two different creators that I've talked to, is, you know, after 30, 40 years of work, he's got a body of work there, and there are still people talking about it to this day. And how does that make you feel about people that want to keep your dad's memory alive, not because they've ever met him, but because through his work?
It affirms everything that I thought about my dad, but I'm like, okay, so this wasn't just me being a biased kid who thinks my dad is the coolest. I'm like, no, so he actually definitively was the coolest person ever. Like, so this isn't just some dumb opinion that I had as like a little naive child who only got to see her dad once a week and every other weekend. Like, this is for real. And so it's so nice to have that like affirmation or confirmation that everything I thought about him was 1,000% true and more, because I have this one fan, you know that guy.
Yeah. I just came across his stuff. I'm going to give you that back.
This guy is, he's obsessed.
Like Misery.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really?
He sends me, he asks like what specific issues of comics that I want on my dad's. I was like, well, I really just want that one where my birth is announced. So I got that one. You know, I'm like, yeah, casually. My birth was announced in Avengers, you know. So it's so beautiful to know that like he really was the coolest, and that it's not just, you know, my opinion.
Yeah, and thank goodness a lot of the fans are like you, buddy, not like that.
No.
No. He's a little obsessed with you.
Yeah, I'm like, not taking pictures of my feet.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's a borderline kind of thing, and it was like, okay, this is fanatic.
Yeah, I shared because he would, you know, type me letters. He sends me emails and letters, although I didn't tell him where I moved to, so I don't think they've been forwarded. But anyway, so I shared them with Ken. But he's the only one that's inappropriate like that. But anyway, but most of them are really sweet and genuine and awesome, like you.
And just going all over Comic Con, and just like mentioning him, and having people's reaction, and either they were influenced by him, or it harks back to a time at Marvel that doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's something that is very precious, and I want to try and recreate that again, because, and that's what I'm doing in the fashion world, because the fashion week has gotten too overblown. It's MCU just on the runway, and we've got to bring it back to authenticity, to really caring about designers, about caring about the creative process, and it's not just make a buck.
Right. Well, and I think something that's so special about Dad was that, I mean, my favorite work of his is the official handbook. I mean, that thing is the cool, like it wasn't just a story, it was a continuity guideline, a thing to base every single future comic off of. So the fact that is his legacy, like, is the coolest thing ever to me, because I followed in his like nerdly footsteps. Is like I love continuity as well.
People used to just use that as like kind of like a index, like look up certain characters. I actually read those issues from cover to cover. Every single issue that came out, I was like, oh, I've never read about this character before, and then it would, he was really key in my education on the Marvel universe, especially. Those came out like back in like 1985, 86. When I was, my fledgling comic book life. That was the beginnings.
I know. So. He was a fan, and he knew,
and you
can tell he was a fan, and he thought like a fan. He served the fans. He answered every fan mail that he got, because Stan Lee answered his letters to the editor. So he had to pay it back, and he wanted to recreate that feeling of belonging to behind the scenes of the comic book creation. And I saw him at Comic Con, I mean, playing games with his fans. I mean, those were fun. We did a lot of stuff together in that.
But remember the Alpha. If you could think of any question that my dad couldn't answer, like any question from the entirety of the Marvel universe that he couldn't answer, like you could say, the
most obscure,
like on page 67 of Avengers 264, like what color is what? He would know the answer. Like you could not outstump him, or he would be like, trick question, which is nuts. And the prize would be you would win a lifetime supply of comics if you could outstump the group. No one could ever.
No one ever.
No. Outstump the group.
No one could outstump.
Pros and cons, all those. Tape heads. He taught people how to take a precious thing like a comic book and beat it up. Like you didn't treat it that preciously. Bobbing for comics. Remember bobbing for comics?
That's why you had three. Because they were precious. But
there you go. The one that you could play around with.
You have a reader copy. That's it.
You
have a reader, and then you have one to put away.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like
he was a collector and a fan.
Yeah, and he also groomed me on how to collect. Like to this day, I collect 3 of everything that I collect. I'm like, no, I need 3. Which
it makes so much sense.
Some people.
Yeah, right. It's not too expensive.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Kat, Sarah, I want to thank you both for coming on and talking about Mark with me. I feel like I tell you, Kat, all the time. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I know him a little bit more. And now I just feel like I know him pretty well now. So, he was the real deal. I really feel you would have loved the country house and coming up there for the parties and everything that we had.
Parties.
The Halloween party was off the charts. But it was he was a really special guy, and I'm just so honored to be able to be his legacy advocate and to have such a wonderful daughter who we can share that with him. I mean, he's alive because we're talking about him and keeping his memory and all of the things that matter to him. I think he's very happy that we're, and I think he can, he can make things happen from a different place. That alternate universe and that parallel reality. He can pull strings that I know there's something going on when I meet the Rhode Island Fashion Week person at a party, at a bar, random, and I'm doing Rhode Island Comic Con. What are the odds of that? You have to get goosebumps and then go on with it,
Yeah, it's meant to be.
Yeah. And he's up there pulling the strings probably, but he's in a different form. He said there's only matter and antimatter.
Yeah.
It's never destroyed, it's just transformed. So he's just in a different place, in a different realm, and in a different form. Basically, that's it. So whole Death Do You Part with a comic book guy, not so much when it's Mark.
Hey.
Way beyond.
Well, his influence is still being felt, 25 years later, especially now in the MCU. So much of his stuff is being translated onto film. So it's fantastic. So
thanks, Bud. I'll see you next month.
I will see you in just a couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah.
And for all the fans out there, thank you all for listening. And we'll talk to you
Happy
soon.
Halloween.
Yeah.
All right. Be right back.
Bye.